We're very, very concerned because this is very out of character. And we can't get in touch with his wife, which is probably the more concerning thing.
I can hear kids inside, and I swear I think I heard one yell.
What's changed since the last person I talked to?
There's a body. There's a body.
There's a body inside?
Yeah.
A double homicide, no arrests, and a killer still on the loose. The Columbus Chief of Police speaking out about the mysterious murders of Dr. Spencer and his wife Monique Tepe. And accused assassin Luigi Mangione is back in court this morning. He's facing a federal judge as prosecutors are slamming his defense team. Plus, could an intense massage be deadly? Well, that's what the defense is saying happened in the cheating fire chief murder trial. We've got a forensic pathologist here on the show to break it all down. Plus, former battalion chief Kevin West drumming up divorce papers the day his wife Marcy died. So how does that look to the jury? We'll talk about it. It's all coming up next for you right here on Opening Statements. Good Friday morning to you and welcome to Opening Statements. I'm Julie Grant. Are you ready for some coffee and some court? It's that time where we get you all warmed up and ready to go for the big day ahead on Court TV Live. We got an awesome show planned. Let's start it off as we always do. Grab that cup of coffee right now. It's time for my opening statement. Do the fire chief's pants need extinguishing? Well, the jury may have to call the fire department depending upon how the evidence plays out. Battalion Chief Kevin West on the hot seat, accused of murdering his wife, Marcy. He called 911 saying he found his wife having a seizure and that he was trying to save her life. Well, prosecutors say that that story was a cover-up of him strangling her to death. They say he wanted his marriage to Marcy to be over so he could go be with his mistress. He says he was planning to serve her with divorce papers and leave her on that day. Wow, what a coincidence that Marcy would suddenly die that same day. Death is probably one of the only things in this life that are worse than a divorce. So how did Marcy West really die? Well, that, my friends, is the million-dollar question in this trial. And we'll see what answers the evidence shows us, especially with the expert evidence and Marcy's autopsy. I do know this. We just hit the 2-year anniversary of Marcy's death. So let's remember this beautiful, innocent woman who was both a wife and a beloved mother. And let's send her children our love and support. And let's have faith that the truth will prevail. That's my opening statement this Friday. Let me know if you like it. Right now, it's time for your daily docket.
Are you able to talk us through kind of what happened or when it first happened?
Yeah. So my dog was whimpering, and I woke up and then realized she was having a seizure.
Okay.
I went around the bed. She was close to that end table to the right of the bed.
Okay.
I slid her down just a little bit, I rested her on my knee, and helped her to the floor. I got her on her side, and then I ran around the bed, got my phone, called 911.
The case I was just talking about, the trial of the battalion chief going on in Washington State. His name is Kevin West. It's going to resume at noon Eastern. The court placed some restrictions on our broadcast, so they're telling us we can't air until the court day concludes, so that for us means the next day. So you're going to see some brand new testimony today. It is really, really good. That is coming up for you on Court TV Live. In Texas, we've got the Uvalde school massacre case for former police officer Adrian Gonzalez rolling on. Testimony resumes 10 a.m. Eastern. And in Florida, we've got defendant and former NFL star Antonio Brown. That's right, AB, got a motion hearing on whether he could travel to New York to work. He's looking at an attempted homicide charge in Florida. The hearing is going to get underway today at 9 a.m. Eastern. We will see what happens there. Right now, though, we want to take you to our top story happening in Columbus, Ohio. The chief of police speaking out about the mysterious shooting deaths of Ohio dentist Spencer Tepe and his wife, Monique. Chief Elaine Bryant says that they're working to answer the community's questions, but some details just have to stay under wraps in order to protect the integrity of the case. She spoke with Columbus station WSYX and says, quote, We know that there are a lot of concerns and a lot of questions surrounding this case, and we want to be able to be as transparent and answer as many of them as we can. Unfortunately, there are some things that we can't talk about for the integrity of the investigation, end quote. She says they've received numerous tips about a person of interest seen in this surveillance footage here. No arrests have been made. The Tepes shot inside of their home on December the 30th. Their 2 young children, a 4-year-old daughter and a 1-year-old son, and a golden doodle named Larry were all left unharmed. Let's talk about this case. I've got 2 great guests standing by. I want to bring them in now, see what they think. Retired FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffindaffer is with us, and so is retired NYPD detective and the host of the Gold Shield Show, Tom Smith. Good morning to you both. Jen, I want to start with you, if I may, please. Your thoughts on something that was reported by Fox Digital. I know you've heard about this. A neighbor reporting a 911 call 11 days before the murder. So here it is, 11 days before an Ohio dentist and his wife were killed. A woman who lives down the street called 911. It was around 2:30 a.m. to report somebody banging on her door who just wouldn't leave. Fox News Digital again obtained a 911 call placed on December the 19th to corroborate this. This is at a resident located just down their street. A woman reported that someone was banging and knocking on her door at 2:31 a.m. Jen, your thoughts?
Well, first of all, definitely law enforcement has to look into this situation. However, this is not the same modus operandi that we see here with somebody easily able to access the house of the Tepes. Further, I think what's important is that area that these houses are located in. It's really surrounded by some of the worst areas that exist in Columbus. So it does make sense to some degree that you might have people leaving bars and so on and so forth that would be, acting erratic like this. Not saying it's not connected, but it doesn't seem to be connected on first blush.
Yeah, I appreciate your insight, Jen. I have a clip from Rob Misley, who is Spencer Tepe's brother-in-law. He's caring for the children right now, and he spoke to our affiliate and said that he does not believe this is random. Let's take a listen.
It just seems like it was not a random act where somebody broke in and this, trying to steal stuff. Like, it just seems a lot more intentional than that.
Personal,
yes. Just unbelievably disgusting that somebody could do something so evil.
Tom, what do you say? Does it seem personal in your professional opinion?
Oh, 100%. This was a targeted murder, without a doubt, because of just all the factors that we've laid out over the past couple of weeks of, no forced entry, where they were killed in their house, the children being, not harmed, and the dog. Someone seeming to know the layout of the neighborhood and the house and the timing of it as well. I truly believe this was someone they knew from either the past or something presently happened to set this horrible set of circumstances in motion.
Yes, Tom. Jen, I want to go through some details about the case for anybody maybe just hearing about it. I'm getting a lot of people reaching out to me because they know what I do and saying, have you heard about this case? This is awful. 3 9mm spent shell casings found inside the family's home. No signs of forced entry, no firearm, though, found at the scene. Spencer was 37 years old, Monique 39. Police believe the window that they were murdered was between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. And they believe that they were murdered on the top floor of their house during that 3-hour period. Jen, if you could know anything about this case, what would you want to know? What are the questions, I guess, burning in your mind? Maybe that's the better way to ask it as a seasoned investigator. What's troubling you?
Well, what's really troubling me is all this video that is in and around this home. Not only both Ring cameras at that home, but cameras that are across the street, also cameras that are at a neighbor. There are so many cameras in this neighborhood. And what's bothering me is I understand how long it takes to review this footage. It's unbelievable, a time pull. I want to know why they haven't asked, say, the FBI for their help, not in anything other than analyzing this evidence. I think this is moving too slow. You have somebody out on the streets that is capable of murdering 2 individuals. Yes, I agree it's targeted. But what happens if somebody starts sniffing around him? Is it possible that he would take them out? So I just think it's really important that they speed up their investigation.
Excellent point, Jen. Yeah, and dovetailing off of your point, Tom, you know, I have many friends in Columbus. I mean, this is rocking the community. It has people on edge asking questions, and I can't imagine how the people on that street may be feeling. What would you say to them and anyone else who feels unsettled this morning that this case hasn't been solved?
Yeah, it is. And you know what, just to back up a little bit, you know, you kind of blame the police department. You know, you have to get out there. I completely understand the integrity of the investigation. I've been there. I've had to hold on to certain circumstances when it comes to a case and releasing it. I get that. But you also have to take into account, like you said, Julie, the safety and the mindset of that neighborhood to put them at ease that it wasn't just a random act of someone knocking on doors and breaking in and murdering people. This had something personal behind it. And that, you know, takes a lot of heat off of the neighborhood and what they're thinking. But like I said, I understand the integrity of it, but you also owe it to the community to have them at ease.
Definitely. So well said, Tom. Jen Koffeneffer, I want to go back to you. You raised an interesting point yesterday. You had us all talking. You were saying how looking at how popular Google searches were for Dr. Tepe might provide some indication. Would you kind of share some more with us about where investigators may go digitally to try to find some good direction to pursue?
Right. No, absolutely. So if you look at Google Trends, it's always very interesting to evaluate when people and places are being Googled in and around a murder. So, for instance, really quickly in the Brian Kohberger, I looked at that 5-week period before there was a suspect name, and you could see Brian Kohberger's name before anybody knew it being Googled over and over and over again, which I think were done by Brian Kohberger. In this case, you look at a flat line of this dentist, Dr. Tepe, nothing except for on November 30th. And then you see a huge spike in review of his account. In other words, web searches and so on. You compare that with after his murder, of course, it's going to spike, but a huge spike on this other day. In addition, there was a huge spike on December 5th, huge. In fact, the largest spike for that address, 1411 4th Street there in Columbus. Why? That is the largest spike that has nothing to do with after the murder. So I would be asking myself, who Googled that? Why? I don't know that there was a party there. I've reached out to the brother-in-law. I just don't understand why these huge spikes unless somebody was looking into them at that point.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. Boy, you know, and to follow up, a detective, might that be worth Columbus Police getting a warrant to get those records from Google and try to find out an IP address where these searches were generated from?
Yeah, Jen brings up a great point. You have to use technology to your advantage today. There's so many avenues that you can use it on a law enforcement level with warrants and just general searches, I think is a great point. And I think that's where this may break because of the digital footprints that everybody has these days. You can't get away from it. And you have to use it to your advantage when it comes to something like this, where you don't have a viable lead going forward. You have to work backwards into their backgrounds, the neighborhood's backgrounds. What other crimes took place in and around that area that might be concerning or linked into this? That one case that they have of someone randomly knocking on a door in the middle of the night. Where's that person? Why wasn't that person a radio car dispatched to see at least who that was in an area knocking on doors? all of this could lead to something. So you have to use technology to your advantage these days.
Yeah, definitely. Great insight from you both. You both have been following this one closely, as have we. We'll see if anything breaks, we hope, very soon. Agent Jennifer Coffendaffer, Detective Tom Smith, thank you both kindly. Coming up next here on Opening Statements, we've got accused assassin Luigi Mangione back in court today, fighting for his life. We're wondering, will the death penalty stay on the table? And how did victim Marcy West really die? Was she strangled by her fire chief husband, or did an intense massage by her stepson end up killing her?
Can you describe your working relationship with Marcy? We sat together for 8 hours a day. She was just a great person, great coworker.
Tonight on Court TV.
I'm Vinny Politan. Welcome to Closing Arguments. We have a big hour ahead here.
Your deplorable actions are unforgivable.
The community still doesn't know how this Boston police officer died.
He can't prove one element of his case. It was a dramatic day, a dramatic moment inside the courtroom.
What's happening here?
It's unreal. Let me show you exactly what happened.
Closing Arguments with Vinny Politan. Tonight at 8/7 Central. Only on Court TV.
You.
911, what is the address of your emergency?
It's not really an emergency. I'm a manager at Plank Road McDonald's out here on the boulevard.
Okay.
And I have a customer here that some other customers were suspicious of, that he looks like the CEO shooter from New York.
Okay.
So they're just really upset, and they're like coming to me, and I was like, well, I can't approach them,
No, of course not.
Luigi Mangione back as a trending topic this morning. He's due in court today. Prosecutors for the federal government are slamming his defense team in a motion for, quote, meritless claims made against the United States Attorney General. Federal prosecutors are saying that, quote, misleading statements about Pam Bondi's ties to a lobbying firm are, quote, assumptions made by the defense as they're trying to get the death penalty taken off the table. Mangione's defense team says Bondi's decision is tainted, saying that her past lobbying work creates a, quote, profound conflict of interest with her connection to Ballard Partners, a company whose clients included United Healthcare's parent company. But in a recent court filing, Deputy Manhattan U.S. Attorney Sean Buckley pushed back, saying the defendant's narrative collapses under the weight of his own assumptions. No present or future financial gain exists. There is no conflict. So the burning question is, will the death penalty stay on the table? Remember, he's got 2 cases going, one in federal court, one in state court. And it is the federal government who's pursuing the death penalty. But what's kind of interesting is that the state case, everyone has decided, will go first. So let's talk about this. Let's bring in 2 former prosecutors. I have with me Attorney David Bruno and Attorney Stuart Ryan. Stu was one of the prosecutors on a very high-profile case. I know you at home know about it. Case against Bill Cosby. He put him away, did a fine job. I got to watch him in action. And Stu, we've missed you. We haven't seen you in a while. So welcome back to the program. I know you're busy in the private sector now, but it's great to have you and David here to weigh in on this case. So Stu, I'll start with you. Where do you think the federal government's going to land with that big decision as to whether to continue to pursue capital punishment for this guy?
Good morning, Joel. It's good to see you again. And I'll be honest with you, I think the federal government has problems, and they're very technical problems, but the defense team in this case has scored big victories, raising technical issues before. And so first and foremost, you have the decision about whether or not stalking, which is the predicate offense for this capital punishment scheme, is going to qualify as a violent offense under the federal statute. And this is not a situation where there's a list of crimes that qualify. Rather, it's based on elements. Perhaps the more concerning issue for the federal government is, as you know, Julie, from your time as a prosecutor, any crime has different subsections, and you're going to be dealing with the potential for a variety of different types of conduct to qualify as an offense. The federal government here charged him with stalking based on actually placing this CEO in the fear of injury or harm. And as we know, this was really just an assassination. The CEO had no idea that he was being stalked or that violence was coming his way. And the federal government chose to charge a particular subsection when others were available under that stalking statute. And I think that's going to be another really technical but critical problem for the government when it comes to capital punishment.
Stu, that's really sharp analysis you just gave us. A follow-up for you, please. Do you think that the prosecutors may have to do some amendments on that federal indictment?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly possible, and I would even say advisable. And again, you'll see what the federal judge is going to do. You expect any judge, especially federal judges, to be hyper technical. And that's why on this conflict issue, I think it's much less of a problem. But when you're dealing with the capital punishment, these are looked at with really close scrutiny. And again, I would expect a federal judge to apply strict standards. An amendment may be necessary.
Yeah, Stu, thank you for all that really helpful insight. David, let me turn to you now with what we can expect to happen today as both sides are going to be back in that federal courtroom. This motion that was just filed and packs a lot of punch from the federal government has come before everyone. Do you think it's going to be taken up by the court today?
Yeah, I think we're going to hear something from the court, but let's lay it out here. I mean, Pam Bondi had employment prior to the DOJ. That was with Ballard Partners. Ballard Partners had lobbying contracts with United Healthcare in 2024 and 2025. When she was sworn in, she stopped all compensation with Ballard Partners. And there's a letter, an ethics letter that was required. She said she wouldn't handle any matters with Ballard Partners or its clients when they are a party. And that's the clear distinction that the government's going to be arguing, is that Ballard Partners or United Healthcare is not a party to this matter. This is the government versus Luigi Mangione. So that's really the big distinction that the government's going to argue. The Mangione's attorney is going to say, hey, look, there's still an appearance of impropriety. But I think the government's going to be okay on this issue as well. Julie, this case is like a law school exam, actually. There's so many issues of search and seizure where we're talking about federal versus PA state or New York state. There's dual prosecutions. This is fascinating when it comes to legal analysis.
Yeah, appreciate it, David. And so this hearing will be Mangione's first trip to the Manhattan Federal Courthouse since his April 25th arraignment. We're also expecting to be taken up today his bid to exclude certain evidence from the case. And the judge presiding over the case, her name is Judge Margaret Garnett. She also has indicated she plans to set a trial date for the federal case. So a lot could happen this morning. Stu, back to you. Do you find it unusual that the state case has been the one decided to go first and the federal case to follow it?
I think that really can depend on the situation. Obviously, in this case, he was charged at the state level first prior to being indicted in federal court. Now, typically at the same time, federal prosecutions, and you get that sense by the judge saying that she's going to set a trial date today, tend to move, pardon me, much more quickly. They're under what we all used to call rocket dockets, that you get indicted and then a trial is set and you go to trial. So in that sense, it's a little surprising that the state case is scheduled to go forward first. And look, who knows? There was obviously an extensive series of hearings about suppression at the state court level, and delays may be inevitable in that case as a result. So I think it also really remains to be seen about which case ends up going forward first.
All right, Stu, thank you for that. One last thing that has a lot of people talking, the place where Luigi Mangione is detained has a lot of infamous people. So we're keeping track of who's housed there at the Metropolitan Detention Center. So far, we got some very notable inmates. Luigi Mangione, Nicolas Maduro is also there. Sam Bankman-Fried's there. Martin Shkreli is there. Ghislaine Maxwell's there. And so is Sean Diddy Combs. Of course, you wonder, will they run into one another there? David Bruno, what do you say?
I'll tell you what, that institution has its hands full, obviously. High-profile nature of those inmates also brings a number of security risks involved. So that list is astonishing. It also brings a number of logistical and institutional problems for that particular jail.
Appreciate it. Great conversation with you both. David Bruno, Stuart Ryan, thank you both so much. We're going to hit a break. When we come back, here's what's next. We're asking, could someone die from an intense massage? That's right. That's the defense theory we're seeing in the cheating fire chief murder trial. We got a doctor on the show next to talk about whether that is possible. And later at 9 a.m., we're showing you some brand new unaired footage from the trial. You're going to hear from victim Marcy West's mother.
Kevin called in the morning to tell me that Marcy had passed away during the night.
Did Kevin say that receiving some money would be helpful?
Yes.
Welcome back. This morning, we're giving a voice to victims and exploring the defense theory in the cheating fire chief murder trial. That's where the defendant's wife, Marcy West, died after an intense massage. That is the defense theory. Prosecution says she was strangled to death. So is it even possible to die from an intense massage? So the defendant is this guy, former battalion chief Kevin West, Marcy's husband. He's accused of first-degree murder and causing her death by strangulation. Now, the medical examiner noted injuries on Marcy's body, including bruises on her jawline, her earlobes, brain swelling, and bilateral subcutaneous hemorrhaging on her neck. But the defense claims that it was a vigorous massage from the defendant's son that could be the cause.
We also learned that on the 7th, before Ted left, he gave her one of these incredible Ted West massages. I should have mentioned it earlier. He gave these massages where he would rub really hard. He would stick his elbow in and just dig until people said, okay, that's enough. Everybody wanted more and more. He gave everybody massages. He was famous for this. He gave Kevin massages. He gave Marcy massages almost every day.
Okay, so Kevin's son, his adult son, Marcy's stepson, is a masseuse. He's a massage therapist, according to the defense team. He's on the witness list. We know that. And the defense is pointing the finger at the massage, saying that a seizure could have resulted the next day because of the rubbing and the maneuvering that was done manually on her head, neck area. Let's talk about that. Let's bring in board-certified forensic pathologist Dr. Priya Banerjee and see what she thinks. Good morning, Dr. Priya. Okay, when you hear that a seizure could happen the day after an intense massage, what do you say?
So as someone who loves massages, so as a layperson plus a medical expert, I think that's really unlikely. We've heard about injuries related to chiropractic manipulation of the neck that can cause strokes, but I have never seen a massage as aggressive as it can be, especially using elbows and hands, leading to the injuries on the front of the neck that we associate with strangulation. So there's bruising in this area, in the jaw, under the skin, they're saying, and then within the muscles and the sides of the neck. I'm using myself as a model because that's a very protected area. And I think any trained masseuse knows that there's so many structures there, you're not supposed to dig into those areas. So potentially they could, he could have given an aggressive massage to the muscles and other areas of the body that are tight, but it seems inexplicable other than inflicted trauma for strangulation.
Yes. Dr. Priya, I want you to take a listen with us. One of the prosecutors detailing what they say were the injuries that Marcy West suffered.
Dr. Burt will testify that there was damage to the carotid sheath that covers your carotid arteries. There was damage hemorrhaging to the esophagus. There was bilateral bruising behind the ears. And that when the scalp was peeled back, there was a large contusion between skull and the scalp.
All right, Dr. Priya, the prosecution theory is that he strangled her. What do the injuries tell you?
So that's quite a cluster of injuries, significant injuries. Now, let's say I'm playing devil's advocate and maybe the back bruising from the skull down to the muscles are attributed to aggressive massage. Okay, let's put that on the table. I'm not sure that's possible, but we'll just go with it. And then my concern is the placement and severity of the bruising in the jaw and then within the muscles. We call them the strap muscles because they're ribbons of muscle that run down. When we turn our neck, we can see some of them. And those are, again, very protected, very delicate structures. And the esophagus is our food tube. That's how we swallow food. So that's quite far back in the throat. And so, again, after the layers of the muscle, the carotid sheath is where we feel our pulse. These are vital structures and deep injury, again, that don't compute with massage for me.
Right. This is really helpful insight you're giving us, Dr. Priya. Have a clip for you from one of the first responders who testified and said that there was no awareness, on their part of any pre-existing conditions with Marcy. Now, we know it's her husband who everybody there is relying on for the information, who's also a first responder, paramedic, trained in CPR. So let's take a look.
My frame of mind then would have been, a catastrophic medical event, either a sudden ischemic stroke, a brain bleed, or an aneurysm of some type. That's where I was thinking was the cause for this.
And at any point during the call, did Kevin mention to you all a history of seizures for Marcy?
He did not. He specified that she didn't have any medical history.
Oh, we hear it straight from his mouth. Okay, Dr. Priya, what do you think when you hear this testimony and knowing the defendant's the 911 caller?
Yeah, absolutely. So he's an informed consumer, if you will, right? I would really rely on any history, a husband who's medically trained, especially in a leadership position. He's not new to the job. I would really rely heavily on that information. And really what a seizure activity tells me in an adult is that there's something wrong with the brain, meaning the brain is irritable. In her case, hasn't gotten oxygen. There was brain swelling. And that's why there's seizures. So the brain basically short circuits and has the seizure activity. Now, in an adult with new onset seizures, I think the gentleman testifying is correct. It could be a stroke, it could be brain cancer, some other type of cancer, infection, or injury, right? So the irritation, so once you're strangled, you don't get oxygen, the swells, it's irritated and has seizures. So it doesn't tell you what's going on inside. It's sort of a manifestation of her death. But once we do the autopsy, we know that those other issues are ruled out.
And Dr. Priya, one last quick question to kind of sum it all up and put a bow on it. In your opinion, does this sound more like a death caused by strangulation than it does a death caused by a seizure set into motion from a massage?
Correct. I'm very suspicious that this was a manual strangulation, meaning the bruising caused by hands of the assailant on her. Now, again, remember, it's innocent until proven guilty. I cannot tell from the autopsy who inflicted the trauma, right? So we have to take that into play. But the bruising in these very protected areas of the neck and the jaw, like this area, and the deeper injuries to me, are a homicide.
Yeah, I appreciate your insight. Really, really helpful. Dr. Priya Banerjee, thank you. As we go to break, we want to remember the victim in this case, 49-year-old Marcy West. We wish we knew more about Marcy. There's very little that we were able to find on social media. We couldn't even find an obituary for her, but we know that she certainly didn't deserve to die. And we hope that her family will speak out We would love to speak with them. We would love to learn more about Marcy. We know she was a beloved mother and a wife, gone way too soon. We'll be right back. School shooting that broke hearts around the country
and broke trust with law enforcement.
Now, the officer sworn to protect those students faces a jury.
The Uvalde School Massacre Trial. Live coverage today on Court TV.
I'm going to ask you a lot of personal questions.
From the crime scene to the courtroom, this is victim to verdict.
Everyone has this heightened sense of anticipation.
Overall, it just seemed very strained for a very long time.
Did he tell you about the basis of the strains?
I think there were multiple facets to that. Intimacy, how there was some differences in how they parented, some strain about the children.
As the murder trial for Fire Chief Kevin West rolls on today, testimony from those closest to the defendant and his late wife, Marcy, could be tipping the scales. Prosecutors say the defendant wanted a divorce from Marcy and was already moving on with his mistress. On Thursday, Natasha Mulder, who is Marcy's sister-in-law, described staying with the couple during a Christmas visit in 2023. So this would be right before the time of Marcy's death. She also talked about the odd behavior she noticed going on in the West household.
They never had a lot of displays of affection with company, right? So, but I noticed that there was just a lot of tension in the household. Kevin left the room frequently throughout our visit, taking phone calls, and I don't know to who exactly he was talking to. He joined us once for an activity with the family at the zoo to see the lights.
Okay, so the zoo lights.
The zoo lights.
Okay. What did you observe during the zoo lights activity?
During the zoo lights, he and I were in this passenger seats behind the driver in the front seat, and he was on his phone texting a lot and would look at me and turn his phone away for me to see what was there.
Text messages indicating that defendant Kevin West planned to move out of the house the day that Marcy died and also finish up the divorce paperwork the following day. So were those divorce papers a ploy? How might the jury interpret these facts? Let's discuss it. Let's bring back in attorney David Bruno, also former prosecutor. Okay, David, what do you say about drumming up these divorce papers? Was it really what he was trying to do? And did this death just coincidentally happen on that day? Or do you think it wasn't a coincidence? Do you think that the divorce papers might have been a little bit of a cover-up measure?
Well, in our last segment, we talked about the pathologist and the pathology of these injuries in the front of the throat and jawline and brain. That's going to be the primary issue. But however, that divorce issue and the mistress really brings it home for the prosecutor to corroborate their theory that it was strangulation and a homicide. So what it shows is it shows turmoil. It does not show harmony and a harmonious relationship, which is going to give prosecutors at least sort of that motivation. I'm surprised really by this all or nothing defense by the defendant's attorney in the opening statements, because really they're trying to say that the injuries were caused by a massage and that this was seizure. And it's all or nothing, because if the jury does not believe that, they go probably to the premeditation first degree, when maybe there was a passion provocation or an argument or something that happened that caused that would have negated the premeditation down to a manslaughter. This defense is going hard on the medical, and this supportive documentation and correspondence with the mistress is really supportive of the state's case.
Mm-hmm. David, I really like how you put that, the all or nothing defense, as you said, because if the jury doesn't believe their expert, then Defense has nothing there. Others, they're really stuck. Tell me, when we think about this, really spawned a big conversation in our newsroom with the divorce papers. Why go to the trouble of having papers drafted up? You wonder if that's a little bit favorable to this guy. Who would spend that money? It's expensive to get a lawyer to draft up the paperwork and have it served on the other party. You know, why might he do that if he was going to kill her anyways? What do you say?
Absolutely. I mean, it's favorable to him on the issue of premeditation. Now, that's obviously showing turmoil, and the emotions are hot and high when parties are dissolving a relationship or a marriage, especially when kids are involved. We heard that there are children involved. We heard that there are parenting issues that were at issue here. You know, so it does go to his benefit. But again, he's not saying that he snapped or that there was an adequate provocation to support passion provocation. This really does help the prosecutor show that this was not a harmonious relationship, and this was not just a medical event that resulted in a death.
Sure. And David, tell me, who do you think has the better case here? You know, you practice criminal defense work now, you're in the private sector, you've served as a prosecutor, you can see both sides, you have no horse in this race. Looking at it from afar, whose side do you think the jury is more likely to believe?
Yeah, at this point in the case, I'm definitely persuaded what I'm hearing from the pathologist on the state side. You know, those injuries in the front. Now, for anyone that's not accustomed or does not know about the autopsies, they're peeling back skin to see the underlying tissues of underneath into the muscles. They really have an eye towards muscles. And what happens for these injuries is that there's hemorrhaging, there's bleeding underneath. That's oftentimes when you see bruising on the skin, what's happening is there's hemorrhaging in the muscles and underneath the skin. So they're able to see that, and they're able to see where, when, not when, strike that, but where and to what severity. And when you talk about in this front area, that's certainly indicative of strangulation. And there will likely be brain injury also to support the strangulation theory of the case.
Right, David. Yeah, hearing Dr. Priya talk about that, you know, she's right. You know, it could be true that she did have a therapeutic massage. I get them all the time. Honest to goodness, I had one last night on my head, my neck, my shoulders. It was from a car accident that I still have trouble from. And they give me a lot of relief. So I don't find it hard to believe that, yeah, there might be a lot of pressure and getting knots out and all that. But to say that that would set into motion a seizure, Dr. Priya was saying, I just don't believe that is possible. And because there's no reason for that therapist to go in front and be hard on the neck. I mean, you cough, you choke if they touch you funny. Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So I think if the government, to your point, David, can bring in a really effective expert to be the teacher, right? Get in the box, teach the jury. Would you kind of tell me ideally what you would do with that witness, what you would do with that expert to help the jury understand how, yeah, the defense might be coming with the receipts that a massage happened, they might have the testimony of the son, but that it is separate and apart from the marks on the front of this woman's neck?
Yeah, when I think about a great expert, I think about Dr. Tobin that we saw in the George Floyd case. He just demanded attention. He brought forth that expertise. He explained things very well for the jury, and it became persuasive. You know, so that's what I would want to do as a prosecutor. I would want to draw in the expert's expertise and really get him engaged with the jury to be a source of credibility, because ultimately this is the issue of the case. The medical doctor is going to be front and center for the state, especially if they're able to show the injuries that we're talking about in the last segment in here.
Yeah, Dr. Tobin, that's a great example you gave us, David, someone to think about. You want a really compelling teacher up there. You're teaching, educating the jury on what's what and how it goes. We'll see what happens. We got brand new testimony rolling out shortly. David Bruno, big thanks to you for being on. We'll see you soon. Friends at home, thank you for watching this episode of Opening Statements. If you like the episode, tell your friends about it, watch it again. can check them out on demand. We pop them up on our website every day for you. Just go to courttv.com, click on that red shows tab at the top.